What's up guys? I'm back today with another video. If you've been here before, welcome back. If it's your first time, thanks for tuning in and checking out the channel. I really do appreciate it. If you want, you can check out all my social medias over here on the side. As I've mentioned on the channel before, my dad lives in Indonesia and he comes back once a year, and that happens to be today. For the very first time on the channel, I'd like to welcome my dad on the channel.
Hey guys!
Alright, so for today's episode, what we're going to be doing is he is going to tell you about all the cars he's ever owned, which looks like 7.
It's not that many.
Not many.
No.
7 cars, and he's going to give a little bit of information, and I'm going to pull up a picture of all the cars he's owned, and then at the end of them, I'm going to rank them, my favorite to my least favorite of the cars. And that's pretty much it.
I think these are the right years.
Okay.
You know, we're ballparking it a little bit. I've known him a long time.
Yeah, since birth.
Yes, since birth. All right, so should we start with the first one?
Let's do it. All right, what was your first car? And you can tell a story about each car or your favorite thing about them, worst favorite thing.
Well, I'll probably tell a story about each one as best I can remember.
That works. All right, What was your first car?
All right, so I think it was a 1971 Ford Ranchero. And I bought that car for $35.
What?
And this is before I even had a driver's license, and certainly we didn't have any insurance. And so I worked at Davy's Ice Cream, and I bought it from a dude that was my manager at the time, and it was $35. And it was the biggest hunk of crap that I've ever seen in my life. It didn't have the back window. It didn't have the back wall. The ignition was hanging down on the floor. You could see the road through the floorboard. It had a broken windshield, I think one windshield wiper, and it had one headlight that worked, and it was the high beam, and it would shine into the tree. So, it didn't have a title. The tag belonged to another car. And then so I went out with some friends one night, and we had a good time. And we decided to drive over mailboxes in that car. And I don't know how many we drove over. It was quite a few. And so we were all jammed into this piece of crap. And we ran over a couple ones, and then we drove it into the ditch. And then I remember being in a field, and we were doing donuts, and the car stopped. So we ripped off the tag, threw it in the woods, and walked home. And then the next day, the dude's like, yeah, I saw the car on the side of the road. I was like, I don't want that car. You can have it back. He just left it there. I don't know what happened to it. So, that was the first car. All right.
Number 2.
What was number 2? Oh, yeah. Okay. So, I bought this car. And I guess it's a 72 Oldsmobile Cutlass. And it was, it definitely did not look as good as this picture right here. It was very flat. It was red and white. And I'm not even 100% that this was the car. You know, it seems like the front was different or something, but I can't really recall. But it had a big giant dent in the passenger side. It had these huge doors, and you couldn't really open it. I mean, you could. I think you had to have maybe like a screwdriver or something silly like that. And it ran. You know, it ran. Had to get a wheel bearing in it, but of course I didn't know anything about cars at the time. So and eventually I sold it. I don't remember how much I got for it or anything like that. But I guess it was pretty reliable. But it made a lot of noise, and it was just old and beat up. So, but it got me around. I mean, it sucked on gas for sure. So gas was a lot cheaper than it is now.
Car number 3.
The Scirocco. Yeah, now the Scirocco is a pretty cool car, and I bought it from a foreign exchange student or a student that was going to college that was from, I can't remember where he's from, but he was moving back. So I think I bought it for like $500. And it looked just like that. Looked just like that gold one. And it was a neat car. I did like that. It was a manual. I had to get the shift bushings changed in it, and that was a phenomenal upgrade. But I drove that car when Florida first started to do an inspection for emissions. And I took it in, because we had to take all our cars in. and I took it in, and it failed miserably, right? So I went back to the shop that I had that was working on it, that I used, and they tinkered with it or something. They might have, I don't know exactly what they did, but they told me that I could drive there, go through the test, and I had to come back immediately. So I don't think it was necessarily safe. But anyways, I went, took the test, passed on the hydrocarbons, went back, and then became a polluter once again. Then eventually, it wouldn't start, so I had to always like push it and start it. And thank goodness it was in Florida and there's no hills. And so I'd run and push it and I could get it going, and you know, that was fine. So I did that for a long time. And once again, I didn't know anything about cars at this point in time. And then I just could not get it to keep running. It kept stalling and stalling and stalling. So I called this dude who had quite a few of them. And he came, and I think he knew exactly what was wrong with it, and he bought it on the spot. So it was no big deal. And it was kind of junky, but it was a cool little car, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was neat. So this is when I learned about cars. So this was, I liked this car. I was wanting to get a Volvo because they were solid, and it had a manual sunroof on it. That was super cool. And it was just a 2-door. Most of them seemed to be like 4 doors. And I bought it, and then it needed, so if you just run water, I think through your cooling system in Florida, there's some sediment that'll build up in there. So I had some blockage, and I got that fixed. But eventually, I wanted to learn about cars. As opposed to having this magic box under the hood that's run by gerbils, you know, I wanted to see how it operated. So I decided to rebuild the engine on this particular car. And it was a complete rebuild. I didn't do anything with the head. I took that into the machine shop, and then they reconditioned the valves, and I think switched the valves out. But everything else I did. And when I finally got it started, it was incredible. You couldn't even hear it. It was just like, it just sounded perfect, you know? So I guess even though I had some parts left over, which was interesting. I couldn't figure out where some screws went, and because I kept everything together, you know. This is my first major project like this, right? And I remember I did call the Volvo guys because I couldn't. I don't think I had the firing sequence right, and I asked him. I got a mechanic on the phone. And I said, "Hey, I just rebuilt the engine on my Volvo." He hung up the phone on me. But then I got it to work, and it was great. And then pretty much I moved to Tennessee. So this is like 95. And drove it to Tennessee, did all that work on the engine, and the transmission blew out. Pretty much, I think, because I didn't torque in the tube, the transmission fluid tube, and it leaked out from the side of the car, right? Anyways, so to get back up to Tennessee in this car, I had to, and I lost the dipstick completely, so there was no way to hold the transmission in there, right? So I ended up taking a funnel, like a gas funnel, and jamming it in the hole. And it, maybe I don't know if I had some putty or something like that, or if it was just like a rag, right? And so I had to try to keep transmission fluid in there. So I'd run it down the highway, and it would smoke like it was on fire, make this god-awful noise, till it got up into like 3rd gear, 4th gear. And then it would run pretty smoothly, right? Because I don't think it required a lot of transmission fluid and stuff. And so every time I stopped, I'd have to hook up the starter again because, you know, I didn't change out the contacts. Something silly like that. So it took forever to get to Tennessee with this smoking Volvo. And this Volvo, I drove this Volvo in the blizzard of 93. Still infamous today. I was leaving Florida, right? As I left Florida, it was real windy. It had blown out this sign, and it was like, you know, this impending. It was like an omen for the situation that's coming. I get to South Carolina, and all of a sudden it starts snowing, right? And it snows like crazy, man. It's a whiteout. All I can see are these two tiny red lights in front of me, and I'm like, Jesus, what do I do in this situation? It's snowing that hard. So I'm like, do I pull over on the side of the road and see if it'll stop? Which would have been a bad idea, because everybody pulled over on the side of that stop got like snowed in with like 2 to 3 feet of snow. I was like, no, I think I just need to stay behind this car. So, and then I drove out of the whiteout. And then I was in front of the whiteout all the way up to Richmond, Virginia. Well, then we get to the highway, and the radio says that the highway is closed. So I'm like, well, does that mean that it's really closed, or does that mean drive on it at your own risk? So I made the decision that it was drive on it at your own risk. And it was like a solid sheet of ice underneath snow. It was horrible. It took like 13 hours to drive what normally takes like 2.5 on the highway. And I was like, the Volvo, man, it still had some problems. It was so cold on the inside, like the heat wasn't working. And as I was driving in South Carolina, I noticed my windshield wipers kept getting ice on them, and they would go. And the vision, I had a windshield like this, and then after a while, I'm looking out this little half moon at the bottom. And I'm like, good God, that's when I had to stop, man, right? And then I hit some black ice going through DC, man. I swear I was gonna wreck. I swear that car went straight. And I was like, oh my God, man. I mean, it happened so fast, right?
Yeah.
It was terrible. But then I blew the transmission out. I was like, man, I am tired of messing with this car. I traded it. I bought the motorcycle. Okay, so I got this from a guy that I was working with when I was doing landscaping. Right? And he was giving me the runaround on the title. I'd already given the Volvo and everything. It was a trade. He wouldn't get me the title. So I had to end up calling him his parole officer. Man, I had that title next day. Anyways, so the motorcycle was fun, man. You know what? It really sucked when I had to ride into work and it was like 10 degrees.
Yeah.
So I had like this, almost like this army jumper suit on and multiple layers. So I looked like this Stay Puft Marshmallow Man on this motorcycle driving down the road. It was fun, but then people don't see you on motorcycles. So I remember having to lay it down a couple times, and I was like, dude, this doesn't, I don't know if I like this that much anymore. You know, because it got a little scary, I think, for me. And that was nothing. You know, I'm sure seasoned motorcycle riders experience that a lot. But it was enough for me to be like, I gotta get rid of this. It was fun, you know, and then I sold it and built a computer. I think it's a van, right?
Yeah.
All right, this van was actually a trooper for a while, except it had a lot of like lifter noise. And it used to drive me crazy. And I think that this was common in this Mazda engine. Right? And then, and of course I expected to drive it forever. And then I don't remember exactly what happened. Something happened, I don't know, man. The engine started like falling apart. And then so we got a different engine in there. And it ran for a while, but it kept doing that ticking noise, and then I think the same thing happened. But there was plenty of space in there. And so you would have experienced this vehicle when you were an infant. So, and then we got the greatest car of all time.
Old Faithful.
I tell you what, this car is the bomb. Got it in 2004, brand new. It's a 2005. I've done all the work on it, I think. Tune-ups. It has 350,000 miles on it. The back door is just dented bigger than shit because Cohen's younger brother, I think he had the car. It was right after he got his license. He had the car. It was the first day he drove it.
I'm pretty sure.
It was within, I think it was within the first couple hours. He slammed it in reverse and slammed into this big ass Jeep, right? With a big metal bumper in the front and destroyed the whole back door. So we just landed in Knoxville the other day, and I come out and Cohen's like, yeah, I got the car all ready to go. It's good to go. You're great. I needed a battery. Had to go buy a battery, so they put the battery in it. So we go out there to put the suitcases in the back of the car. And I open the door, and there's like all this shit in there. You had like your car mats from the aircraft. I'm like, dude, what is this? He's like, well, I didn't want to have them in the other car.
I call it the toolbox.
Yeah, the toolbox, my ass, it's your fucking Tennessee trash can. Throwing all your car shit in there. So, turn it on, and he said that it was making a muffler noise, so I knew what I was coming in there. But it fired right up.
Mm-hmm.
Fired right up. It hadn't been driven in a while, and it's loud as shit. And you know I hate cars that are loud like that, right? It started to rain, and I turned on the windshield wipers, and of course there's no windshield wiper fluid in there. It's dry as a bone, right? And turn on the windshield wiper, and basically all the rubber comes off the windshield wiper on the driver's side, okay? And the windshield is just like covered with dirt because it's been out there underneath the tree. And so I can't see. And there's like this tiny little moon part that I'm peering out of the windshield. I was like, this will not work. We stopped at O'Reilly's and bought windshield wiper fluid and bought 2 new windshield wipers. Now I can totally see out the windshield and it looks great. But while I was in there, I also decided to spend, I want to say $6.99. $6.99 on some muffler tape. And I thought, well, for $6.99, it's at least worth a try. And so I climbed under the car and I looked, and there's like this quarter-size hole right before the catalytic converter.
Yeah,
And it was just,
assuming it was a big hole.
Yeah, it was pretty good size, right? So I was like, well, okay. So I brushed it off and I taped it up, and then I just ran it for a little bit to let it heat up. And I am actually incredibly impressed with the muffler tape.
Okay. So now that we've talked about all the cars, I'm gonna rank all 7 of these cars in my opinion of my least favorite. We'll do least favorite down to favorite car. 7 down to
Number 1.
down number 1. Okay, so number 7, I'm gonna put the NPV.
But it was so cool.
You got a van that wasn't a Volkswagen bus. Volkswagen buses are the only cool, and a Toyota Previa. They're the only cool vans that you can possibly buy.
I don't know, man. Some of those ones that were like blocked back in the 70s, you know, the half-naked chicks airbrushed on the side and the little
That's
bubble
true.
window. I mean,
that was a thing.
You know, that was
a
like,
thing.
you know, that was like your portable bedroom. You could call them like rapey vans.
All right, so yeah, 7th place is the Mazda rapey van. In 6th place, I'm gonna put the Cutlass in there, followed by, however, I do like El Caminos and Rancheros. 5th place is gonna be the Ranchero, just because you said you can put your foot.
It was a
in the
hunk of
floorboard.
crap, dude. It was ready for the scrapyard, man. I'm surprised it even ran. Like,
I will put, since I'm not really a motorcycle guy, I'll put the Kawasaki in 4th place. Obviously, you gotta put the XB in 1st, because it's the only car I've ever
it's
seen
the
you
number
drive.
1 car
It's bulletproof.
on
It's got
the planet.
every light on the dash. At this point, I don't think it's ever gonna die.
It just needs that
It just
valve
keeps
time.
coming back.
I'm telling you, man, I'm gonna get 1,000,000 miles on that thing. It's gonna last forever.
2nd will be the Volvo, because I've always wanted one of those big brick Volvo cars.
It was
I
pretty
think
solid,
I think
man.
they're really cool. And then 3rd, because I've always liked Scirocco's. 3rd place is the
Scirocco's
Scirocco.
fair. I think that's a fair ranking.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fair ranking.
Okay, so as you guys know, and you've seen in previous videos, I have a big Hot Wheels collection on the wall most of the time behind me. So what better to do when all of your Walmarts and Targets in your area are out of Hot Wheels? You get your dad that lives in another country to get them for you. This one's probably the coolest one.
All right, then this one. So this is like old truck, I guess early 60s, maybe late 50s or something. 1953 Buick Skylark convertible. So, and that's kind of a cool car.
Yeah, that one's pretty cool. I like that one.
I think you said you might have had a double on that.
Yeah, I may have this one tucked away somewhere.
72 Stingray convertible,
Yeah.
which
That one's pretty cool.
which I miscommunicated with you, thinking that you had it, but I'm glad that you don't have it.
I like the color of
It's
it.
a car I'll never drive.
Me too.
All right, here's a Bugatti, 94 Bugatti.
That's pretty cool. EB 110 SS 94.
I thought that was pretty neat.
Yeah. I've never even heard of this.
I haven't either. You know, cool same. And then of course, Cohen's favorite car, The Hummer.
The Hummer EV, that's even worse. We're not even gonna talk about that one.
I want to say that I am very honored to be a guest on my son's show. I love his videos and I show them to my students. I do want to give a shout out to one of my students that's an avid viewer and loves the channel. It's Eleonora, and any other of my Southeast Asian students that might be so inclined to watch. I've had a wonderful time. Thought it would be really cool. So,
yeah, definitely thank you for coming on the show and taking a little stroll down memory lane. It was cool to see the cars you've owned that I didn't know existed before.
I haven't owned that many.
Yeah.
That's really not that many compared to some people my age.
Alright guys, that's about it. We reviewed a bunch of cars, checked out some Hot Wheels, took a stroll down memory lane. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment down below. What was your favorite car he talked about? Guys, I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.
Bye-bye.